verses 7 through 10. And lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, in persecutions, in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong.
Thinking about the Jesus over here, I'm always on the lookout for good material, and I think you gave me some ideas here, David, about looking for Jesus and how we can let the things around us and around Jesus get to where we can't see them, and our attention doesn't stay where it needs to be. That's the I'm kind of developing the idea right now. It's only partially developed, so we'll work on it and see if we can't get some more material out of that. But today I want us to look at this idea of God saying no when it comes to our prayers. Now, this was a meme that was floating around social media for a while. You can see the priest, the casket's there in the audience. It's a little blurred. There's the casket. They're at a great site. And it said, we are gathered here today because your prayers didn't work. And this was my comment. And I said, how do you know? Sometimes we pray for someone to pass peacefully so their suffering is at an end. And even if you pray for someone to be healed, the answer might be no. There is no such thing as an unanswered prayer. And this was an atheist that I forgot to tell you that part, but that's probably obvious. This was the person who the original poster said, no, it's not. It's one of his friends. Who said, you are rationalizing. All prayers are unanswered, even if God exists, which is unlikely. Rationalizing that no is an answer is ridiculous. To paraphrase something George Carlin once observed, if you don't get the result you ask for, what do you say? Well, it's God's will. Fine, but if it's God's will and He's going to do what He wants to do anyway, why bother praying in the first place? Seems like a big waste of time. Couldn't you just skip the praying part and go right to His will? In addition, if God is omniscient, He already knows what you want, so why do you have to ask? Perhaps He just enjoys listening to people beg. There's a whole series of sermons right here that we might do sometime about God's will and exactly how the process of prayer works. I don't think we really went into that much on this series. Now, the original poster of this put this post and said, you and I are voicing the same logic, but it will fall on deaf ears. Indoctrinated theists are impervious to reason. Steve's excuse is just maddening. Now, the person who originally posted this was actually grew up in a very strict Southern Baptist home. He didn't become an atheist until later in life when he went off to college, and I don't know if he didn't have a good foundation for what he believed or how it all played out, but he is now an atheist. And how many country music fans, I refer to this song quite a bit, Unanswered Prayers that Garth Brooks did several years ago, about the man who goes to his high school football game with his wife, meets his high school flame there, and then realizes, you know what, if I had married her, I wouldn't have been able to marry my wife, and how much better it is for me to have married her instead of her, kind of thing. And then the chorus says, I thank God for unanswered prayers. Remember, when you're talking to the man upstairs, just because he doesn't listen doesn't mean he doesn't care. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. And I would say, I know Garth Brooks will probably never see the YouTube of this sermon, but if you are to never see it, Garth, you got it wrong. There is no such thing as an unanswered prayer. How many of you, let me ask you this, because when I hear that, well, God didn't answer my prayer, this or that, how many of you, when you would go into HR or to the boss or whoever, and ask, hey, I need to have Friday afternoon off because my kid's got a ball game that's 2 counties over. I'd like to get off early so I can try and get over there for the game. And boss says, no, sorry, we're short-handed. I can't spare you. Or you go in and say, hey, I want to book my vacation for the second week in June. No, can't do it. We've already got 3 people who booked vacation that week. I need you here. Or how about this one? Dad, can I have the car Friday night? No. Impulse buy at the grocery store. Right there at the cash register. Dad, will you buy me this candy bar? No. Ah, come on, no. Ah, come on, no, put it back. Before I give you the right hand of fellowship on your seat of knowledge. Okay, how many of us have always gotten a yes answer from our parents or from our boss or somebody? Anybody? Always said yes. How many of us have gotten a no answer occasionally, or given a no answer? I'm not grandpa, I get to say no occasionally. We say no sometimes. Remember last week we talked about, we used as an illustration the woman who in the downpouring rain is trying to get a parking spot close to the door at Walmart, and all of a sudden the parking spot opened up. Coincidence, or was God answering her prayer? How many of us pour a cup of coffee, we get to going around the house, we set it down, and I can't find it. This just happened to be twice this week. I can't find it. Where did it go? Oh, okay, forget it. I go back to the kitchen, get another cup of coffee, and oh, there's the cup I just poured. Coincidence, or did God answer my prayer when I said, where's the coffee? But we get no answers from humans, don't we? So why is it we always expect God to give us a yes answer to every prayer we give? Just think about prayers that we all have. We've all prayed for ourselves, for loved ones. I've been out of work for 6 months now. God, unemployment's about to run out. I got 5 interviews this week. I could really use one of those jobs. Praying for the test results that I just had the other day. That it comes back with good news. Dealing with chronic long-term ailments, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, cancer. You see, God sometimes can take things like this that we think are insignificant, like what do I do with my coffee cup? Or getting that parking spot, and give us a yes. But when it comes to the really big things like healing or a job, how come we seem to not always get them? And we like yes answers. We all do. How many of us do like for us to say? There was only one time I can remember I really wanted my mom to say no to me. Some friends wanted to go out to a movie that I had no interest in. They really wanted me to go. And I'm sitting there and she says, of course it came down to I needed the car. Do you really want to go to that movie? I don't think. I said, no, I really don't want to go. Okay, you can't have the car. You have to stay home. Thanks. That's it. I can say, no, Mom said no, she doesn't care. If they get mad at her, there's a bunch of teenage kids. What do I care if they get mad at me? But normally, we like a yes answer, don't we? Jesus, in the garden, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me, nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Father, if it's possible, let me find some other way to do this. God, what did God tell him? No. God's will was for Jesus to go and be the sacrifice for our sins. So even Jesus occasionally got no answer. What about Paul? Look at our text. Open up to 2 Corinthians that we just had read a minute ago. Paul was praying to God to remove whatever this thorn in the flesh was. What did God tell him? God said, my grace is sufficient for you, which really is a little bit wordy way of saying, no, I'm not taking this away from you. And there's a reason for it. We'll get to that here in just a second. But see, think about Paul and all that he did. Think about what Jesus did. Going to the cross for our sin. Think about Paul for just a minute. 3 missionary journeys. How many churches did he establish? How many people did he convert? He wrote at least 12 books of the New Testament. If you count Hebrews, he wrote half the New Testament. And here, I've got this thorn in the flesh. Will you remove it from me? No. So what do we do when God says no? Well, let's look at this here for just a minute. The trouble. This is trouble with a purpose, is what I call it. Look at our text. Lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan, to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. See, here's the thing. We have the why. Why did he not get that thorn removed? Here's the why. What was the thorn? I don't know. Been a lot of speculation about it. Some have thought it was he had poor eyesight. He makes reference in one of his letters to having written with really large letters. Some have thought maybe it was a speech impediment. Some said that Paul's speech was contemptible. Okay, that could be. Others have thought maybe it was his stature. The name Paul actually means small or little. Maybe he was a short guy. We don't know. But what's more important than us knowing the what is the why? Here's the why right here. It was so he wouldn't get a big head, or as they used to say down south, so he wouldn't get too big for his britches. In other words, Satan here brought this into his life. God allowed it, and God used it. God sometimes will use bad things in our life to, of course, in Romans 8, it tells us so that he can conform us to the image of his Son. Remember, prayer isn't about getting our way. Oftentimes it's about surrendering to the will of God. Now, it's always easy to do. And I can tell you that this lesson isn't aimed or isn't preached just to the audience out there, but it's also preached to me. There's some conviction that I got here when I was preparing for this lesson. Because there are times when I get told no, that it doesn't sit well. And probably every one of us can think of times in our lives when we were told no by somebody, whether it be God, whether it be our spouse, whether it be a parent, and it didn't sit well with us. But it's about trusting God when he says no. It's about trusting that God is really going to let this work out for the best. It's like when a parent tells their child no, you're trusting mom or dad that this is going to work out, that they gave me the right answer. Not necessarily the answer I want to hear, but the answer that I am needing to hear. Proverbs 19, many are the plans of the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. We get our plans, I guess another way you could say that, I make my plans and then God lets life happen. Or I make my plans and God says, yeah, right, watch this. It's a great line about making God laugh. Just tell him what your plans are. And God, it is God's purpose that ultimately is going to be, that is going to find its way to happen. See, Paul needed that thorn to keep him mindful that he is no better than any other man. Remember, he's a Pharisee of Pharisees. He trained with Gamaliel, who was the number one theologian of the day. He had, a Pharisee, came from a long line of Pharisees, was a Roman citizen. He had all kinds of things going for him. And at that point, it is real easy to let it all go to your head. How many of us knew somebody in school who maybe was a little bit wealthier than the rest of us? Maybe they got a brand new car instead of a used one for their 16th birthday, and they let you know they got it. They like to rub your nose in it. Maybe Paul had that sort of a pride problem. And this was one way of God keeping him under control, keeping his pride where it wouldn't get in the way. Because when pride gets in the way of doing a job or doing anything, it can really cause a really hard fall. So there's a purpose to this. Now, who's in charge? Who's the boss here? Well, prayer reminds us we're not in control. But it keeps us close to the one who is. Just think about how much goes on that we cannot control. The storm last night. Anybody here able to control it? I came over early this morning to set things up and go over the lesson, and I was here a couple of hours, and I think 4 times in that the rain was coming down hard enough that even if there were just 2 of us in the room, I doubt we could have had a conversation. It was coming that loud and that hard. What could I do about it? What I'm doing right now is stand here and let it wait it out. Now it looks like it's probably gotten a little sunnier out there. The clouds have probably broken up, but I still even can't control that. I can't control the things that go on around. Seeing what Paul's thorn here was really is irrelevant to us. He can't control it any more than we can, but the why. That God decided this was the way that Paul was going to keep his ego in check, basically. That he wasn't going to get too big of a head for the job he was doing. And look at what he did accomplish a lot. And a lot of times we can accomplish things, we forget that people around us that might have helped us get to where we are. And Paul acknowledged that the only one who could remove this thorn, and that was the Lord. The Lord, that's it. That's the only one that could, whatever this thorn was. And he's begging God. He said 3 times. And God said, my grace is sufficient for you, Paul. And it's through this weakness, Paul, the thorn that you've got, that I'm going to show my strength. I'm going to show people what I can do. And I'm going to use this thorn to do it. That's what this was about. His prayer may be drawing a deliberate parallel to that prayer of Jesus back in Gethsemane, back in the garden, before he went to the cross. And so if Jesus and Paul can go through this, how about us today? Can we go through the times, the harder times that we have to deal with? See, Jesus accepted the cross through fervent prayer, and Paul presented himself to submit to God's will. Now here again, I'm going to do this again. Is this always easy? No, it's not. Nobody likes to be in long-term pain, long-term discomfort. Nobody likes to have to deal with chronic problems for months or years at a time. Short-term pain, okay, I had surgery, I'm a little sore, a little stiff for a couple of days, maybe a week, but eventually I get over it and I get going. I don't like long-term stuff. And whatever this thorn was with Paul that he had was a long-term situation. And he didn't get over it. It looks to me, as far as I can tell, whatever it was went with him to his grave. See, in times come in our lives when we have to learn to accept what is inescapable and see if there's a lesson there somewhere for us. And we might find sometimes that we're mistaken about what we think is best for us. I was, preparing this and thinking about some of the interviews in churches that we had visited. There was one church I was in the Nashville area that I thought this would be it. It was a 700-member church. I thought, okay, this would be great. There are lots of things we can do here. That was about 20 or so years ago. You know how many members that congregation has now? 0. It eventually folded, and it happened pretty quickly. God saving us from something? Maybe. Other churches that we interview at and other jobs that I've interviewed for where the company ended up going belly up, where the church had to split or some other thing, and if we'd have gone there, we'd have been caught right in the midst of it. Or if that company had hired me, I would have been out of a job in a year maybe. You think God was looking out for me there? It looked bad on the surface, but in the end, it was actually it worked out for the better. We didn't have to deal with all the other issues that came with it. Paul wanted God to remove this thorn because it's bothering him. It's pricked him. It's bothering him. It's a long-term thing that he is trying to get past. It distracted him from his labor. If you've ever had something on your mind, an emotional situation, you've had physical ailments, it can be distracting while you're thinking about it. Well, it's taking a lot of your time. And then it made him appear personally weak and sickly. We don't like that, do we, guys? We don't like to appear weak. We want everyone to think that we're tough, we're strong, we're macho, right? You guys must be asleep out there. Either that or you need your wife to say it's okay for you to answer. It's okay, can you just let them answer? But that's what we like, isn't it? We like to appear tough, and no doubt Paul did too. He's also the leader. He's looked to, arguably, he is the most important apostle right now at this point, as they're getting the New Testament written and the church is established. Yeah, Peter's in there too, but Peter didn't write anywhere near what Paul did. And as far as we know, he didn't go on all the journeys that Paul did. So some reasons that God did not remove the thorn. God wanted to guard against Paul's being puffed up. This is keeping him humble. We've all probably got situations in our lives where that happened. A lot of parents I've known over the years who've got multiple children. One I'm thinking of in particular, he had 3 sons and a daughter. 2 of the sons are preachers. The daughter married a preacher. The other son, I never even knew that. I had known this guy for about 10 years before I knew he even had that 3rd son. And he said, yeah, that's the one that keeps me humble. And secondly, God wanted to reveal his power to Paul. How else is he going to do it if he keeps curing everything, just giving Paul like God's a genie? God wanted to reveal that power to Paul, and God wants to teach Paul to live for Christ's sake. He keeps attention focused on the Lord and the work there that needs to be done. And if he did this prosperity gospel thing where Paul can just name it and claim it and get whatever he wants, that's not going to work. And that's also not really going to teach faith. Without going through the bad times, how do we appreciate the good times? How do we appreciate the yes answers without getting some no's occasionally? How do we appreciate the warm weather? We don't have to go through a few winter storms. And if you like the cold weather, you got to do it vice versa, right? You got to go through some hot summers to be able to appreciate the cold temperatures of that, if that's what you like. And to have it my way. It's like the old Burger King ads. All we ask is that you let us serve it your way. Yeah, that's right, serve it my way. I'm a customer, I'm paying for this. Yeah, when it comes to God, it doesn't work that way. You don't always get it your way. Prayer isn't about getting my way, it's about surrendering to God. Surrendering my will to God and understanding what it is he wants me to do. Now, is that going to be easy to figure out all the time? Well, no. There are going to be times that it takes a little pondering, a little thinking. God does not exist to serve us. This isn't like a waiter down at the restaurant or the waitress. He's not there to serve us. We're here to serve him. When I'm at a restaurant, if my coffee cup's empty, I can wave the waitress away. Can you fill this up? Can you get me to do this? You can do that. That's what they're there for. But that's not what God's there for. We are continually to seek after God. We are continually to look, seek, ask, seek, knock. And then prayer is not just asking for what I want. It's trusting God who knows what's best. This was probably, as a kid, this is hard to comprehend from your parents. I think I want that brand new bike, or I want that new game. Or I want to take a trip here, or go here with my friends, and Dad or Mom, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And they tell me no. Here, God, I'm praying for this or that or the other, and God says, no, I don't think that's a good idea. The answer is no. Now, the difference is I can argue back and forth with Mom or Dad. With God, yeah, I can argue a little with him, but God's not going to verbally say to me, well, you can't have a yes answer here because of X, Y, or Z. That's something I'm just going to have to figure out. And it may not happen right away. It may take a while for me to figure that out. So Paul now has a different perspective on that thorn. God didn't take it right away, so Paul experienced Christ's power in ways he never would have, and God just given him a yes answer and taken it away. Look at verse 10. Paul said, I would never ever choose this experience, yet because I experienced the presence and power of God. Now, there's been some bad experiences I've gone through that I would never want to do it again. But at the same time, I look at them and I say, okay, yeah, I did learn something out of this. Now, did it keep me from repeating the same mistake down the road? 50-50 shot on that one. Some of us just take a little longer to learn. But Paul's ministry is more powerful because God didn't do what Paul wanted him to do. Because God told him no. So what if we changed our perspective? Instead of expecting God to always give us a yes, we change that to, okay, maybe God said no. Or maybe God's wanting me to wait a while. There's always that possibility. But sometimes that's going to be a hard one to tell sometimes. But here again, remember, if God always told us, here's what I want you to do, if he said yes all the time, where would faith be? We wouldn't need it, would we? And if asked, how do you make it through? Sometimes maybe we should answer, I don't know, it's the grace of God. See, this is also a way you can use this as a means of opening doors for the gospel. When someone says, I see you're going through all these problems, you're always having this problem or that problem, how do you do it? Well, because I've got a Christian family that prays for me, I've got the grace of God, I've got the good Lord guiding me through all this. There's an opportunity there to share the gospel. Have you ever thought about that? And over time, Paul's perspective changed as he looked back, and that can be true for all of us. A lot of times, things are happening, you're not going to know and get a clear vision until you get past it. And you can look back on it and say, okay, I see what was going on here. Because when you're in the heat of battle, that's when things are happening fast and furious, and it can be real difficult to be able to ascertain what good is going to come out of this or what lessons are to learn. But Paul received something far greater than healing. He got a greater grace from God, a stronger character, and the ability to empathize with others. That's another thing about going through a thorn-in-the-flesh situation, is maybe you will down the road encounter someone who's dealing with the same exact thing, and now you can help them. Hey, I know what it's like. I've been there. I've had to deal with the same situation. And maybe then you can help someone. And here again, maybe it will open a door to share Jesus with somebody that you wouldn't have had if all the prayers we had been given were yes answers. And this one I realized after I had finished the outline, this was something I added in that of all of those we can receive too. We can receive the greater grace from God, the stronger character, and the ability to empathize. We can receive all that when we go through some of these same issues that Paul was dealing with. We all have things in life that we don't like to have to deal with. We've all got things, situations that are unpleasant. And when I was an employment specialist at the school back in Florida, I told the kids, look, even when you get your dream job, if you land your dream job, dream occupation, your dream play, I said, then there are going to be days that you wish you were doing something else. That there are going to be aspects of your job that you don't like to do, but it comes with the territory, you got to do it. And that is going to be the same for all of us. But we still continue keeping our faith. We continue praying, continue believing. We continue trusting God about His will being done. But this morning, a lot of us are struggling with things. We've got questions in our lives about what we're dealing with, about what's coming. We may, and we're praying to God for those answers. You may have got your friends and your family praying for you. Well, we'd like to pray for you too if you'd like our prayers. We'd like to help you. So this morning, if you're subject to that invitation that you would like our prayers, we'll be glad to pray with you. If you're not a Christian and you need to become one, to be immersed, to have your sins forgiven, we're here to do that too. If we can help you with your walk with the Lord, let us know as together we stand.